Why do you say that, Father? You aren't afraid, are you?
No, but I respect some of the superstitions of others. Often they are founded in fact.
This is your time. This is your call to arms. For the Cryptid Connection is your voice. I'm your host, Jennifer.
And I'm your host, Stephen. Welcome to Cryptid Connection.
The Cryptid Connection podcast is brought to you by CryptidConnection.com, a website dedicated to you, one who has interest in all things cryptid and paranormal. CC is a place where you can enjoy a hassle-free lifestyle and community of Bigfoot pursuit. All our podcast guests are members of the website. Stop by via the internet and visit. Guarantee you will start to feel at home. CryptidConnection.com.
Welcome to the show. We have a continuation of Rich Daniels' interview. In the last episode, Rich discussed his prior experience and what got him into the cryptid lifestyle. He goes into detail about the new scientific research paper he just released publicly and its implications on how research is conducted. Especially important is with how a witness interview should now be carried out. Let's get back to the interview. I'm really glad that you went into the whole idea of holistically treating a witness. At some point, are you gonna either consult or do something, essentially create some sort of a syllabus, or do you do some training or something like that where researchers could find more information on what would be appropriate? I mean, is this something that, you speak about or you talk at conferences about? Okay, you do? All right. I wasn't sure.
In the talk that I did today, somebody actually asked me about that.
Oh, and just to clear things up a little bit, I know Jen threw you, or at least I think she did, when she asked about that woo factor thing or whatever. She was trying to say, what was it that the professional health services themselves, they just cataloged everything as woo, essentially. Crazy. And that's what, it's crazy. That's why everything went to, immediately to schizophrenia or hallucination or something like that. I think she was just trying to...
Yeah. I mean, when I said they just didn't know what to do.
Right.
They weren't prepared for something like this. They weren't willing to deal with something like this.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, that wasn't throwing me a curve at all. It's fine.
Okay. No, I was just, I was afraid.
Always is afraid that I say the wrong things. Stephen's always afraid that I say the wrong thing. That's why he keeps my mic off half the time.
Well, no, it's not that.
Well, no, in the community, the woo factor is when you cross the paranormal, the cloaking. Bigfoot can, hide himself. He can go in through portals, stuff like that. But, however, I always think it's relative because you don't understand that Bigfoot can hide himself as easily as he can because he's adapted to his environment, and it's easily termed woo.
No, I mean I've heard of woo, but I haven't heard of a woo factor. I just wanted to hear that a little bit. But when it comes down to it, when people ask me about that, I just say I don't have any experience with that. It is a very grounded, very real physical creature.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
And I realize other people have made those reports. I've talked to people that have said these things have stepped into a flash of light and disappeared. Okay, I wasn't there, so I can't tell them no. Number two, I've experienced so many weird things since I've gotten into this kind of research that I can't tell anybody no. All I can really say is I don't know.
That's where I was going with that.
It's okay to say I don't know. I mean, you can only do so much in this field or any field. It's really like taking an orthopedic surgeon and asking him a question about bipolar disorder.
Exactly.
He's got his specialty and he's on it. But when you get to this other stuff, it's like, okay, wow, okay, I know a little bit about it, I've heard about it, but I can't really be proficient at it. It's one of those things. But I am fully of the mindset that you have to be able to say, I don't know, and it's okay to do that.
And keep an open mind, because you don't know how traumatic their experience was until they open up to you, which is fantastic.
You can't judge that because you weren't there.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and until it can be proven or disproven, like anything else, you have to just let it be.
Mm-hmm.
Also, it could be that the experience was traumatic enough to them. Well, like you were talking about your experience with cognitive dissonance. This may be, what they're attributing to a miraculous or a otherworldly type thing or something like that, things that we usually call woo. That could just be their brain trying to associate what they saw.
Unknown.
It may be like the brain is replaying a memory in allegory so that it can better understand or something. That's just a theory.
When you talk about things, you use what you know
to
relate to it. It's like the medieval stories of dragons. Nobody ever really saw a dragon. What they found were huge bones in the ground that looked, some of them, they found that, these were the first fossils that were found. And so they immediately talked about dragons. That's what it became, because there were legends of dragons. You use what you have, what you know, to explain what you don't know.
Correct.
And it's an inventive process. It really is. And that's why when I hear a UFO story, or I hear, a cryptid story, or any other kind of story like that, and people immediately say, well, that's not like any plane I've ever seen, so it must be a UFO.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, but there's developmental stuff going on all the time, and, not everybody's privy to that, and that's fine. But it was really funny that we didn't have a lot of UFO sightings until the late 40s, when jets were starting to be developed. Nobody had ever seen anything or heard anything like them before, so all of a sudden we had UFOs everywhere.
Right.
That kind of stuff. But I think that explains a lot of it, but I don't think it explains everything.
No, it doesn't.
Yeah, and especially in the cryptid world. In the cryptid world, there's a lot of things that you really have to wonder about, especially when you get into lake monsters and you get into flying creatures, all that kind of stuff, because people can't estimate size to save their lives. They don't, not everybody is into zoology, so they don't recognize that when they say, I saw a thunderbird and its wingspan was 30 feet. Well, they don't understand that a condor has a 30-foot wingspan. There are birds that are alive right now that have 30-foot wingspans, and they're flying around everywhere. And so, maybe they ranged out of their normal area, and you saw it, and it doesn't make it a thunderbird. It just makes it a really big bird, and you have to understand there are things in it. But people that have never seen anything like that before automatically think it's a monster.
Right.
So, but in the same respect, when I talked to somebody down on one of the Navajo Nations here, a law enforcement officer who was driving down a road and had something swoop down next to it and look at it. It was a pterodactyl. This individual reported to me, this is a law enforcement officer on the reservation, says it was a pterodactyl. It was a gray pterodactyl that looked over at me and then swooped off. So,
okay.
Yes and no. Yes, there are weird things that can be explained, and yes, there are weird things that you cannot explain.
Addressing that, I think I could speak for a lot of people when I will bring up and say that some researchers are going to possibly be a little bit nervous with your paper being published, because they may think that this information may somehow enable hoaxing, that it may enable people to better hoax an encounter story. Mm-hmm. For whatever reason, but they want their 15 minutes of fame for something or whatever, and they decide they're going to do it. They read your paper and are like, oh, okay, this is what I need to look out for. This is what I need to do.
They learn how to manipulate it.
I've heard Mr. Daniels talk. Yeah. How do you handle that possible thing?
I can tell you from the standpoint of what my experience is in the mental and behavioral health field, these reactions you can't fake. It's a physiological change in these people that happens. And the best I've ever seen anybody do it is for about a half an hour. The reactions are too complex. They're too all-encompassing to be able to fake it for a very long amount of time. And eventually the truth will come out. They may fool somebody initially, for a little while. But when it comes right down to it, you would have to be an extraordinarily motivated person to change your entire lifestyle to be, in order to be able to fake this all day, every day. And people that had something to gain by doing it, I deal with all the time, and they can't do it. So, somebody's going to have to deprive themselves of sleep to be able to present that way. You can't present yourself as having no sleep all day long if you got a full night's sleep. It's just too difficult. You can't present yourself as having a headache all day long without, hitting those spots where you're just not, you lose your concentration, you forget what you're doing, and you have that time when you're not affected. Because people with severe headaches act a certain way. People who are sleep deprived act a certain way. And you have to be consistent in that all day long to be able to do it. And that's why, if you know what you're looking for, you're not going to be fooled by these people.
Let's see, on the results of your study, how did the numbers out? You mentioned your numbers. How did they actually break down, and what insights did you walk away from it? What is your study suggesting? I guess I say that because every study just generates more data with more questions, which then goes on and can be further examined with other studies, and that this is how we build our knowledge. What kind of numbers and what kind of conclusions did you actually come to?
Well, the categories that they fall into are there are actually 5 of them, and the first 2 being the most familiar to people, fight or flight. And fight or flight are 2 of those responses, but there's actually 3 more. A lot of people are starting to find out about freeze as a reaction, but very few people understand that there's 2 other reactions in flop and friend. And everybody in these 148 cases fell into those 5 categories. The fight reaction, the aggressive reaction to their encounter, were 11 people out of that. And I was actually surprised that made it into double digits, because when you think about encountering an 8 or 9 foot creature that could probably pull your arms out of the sockets, I don't, connect with being aggressive towards it. I really don't. But, an aggressive reaction can be as much as clenching your fists and staring at it. It can be taking a step toward the creature. It can be shouting or throwing objects at it. And that's 11. That was the mix that you had of the 11 people that were involved in there. Body tension was part of that. Like I mentioned before, the clenched fists, or they're clenching your teeth. The body language of standing, of an aggressive stance is part of it. People picked up weapons to be able to defend themselves with, that kind of thing. So it didn't really surprise me that was 11 of those. That was, it's usually a small response when it comes down to it. So that worked out pretty good. Now the flight response was the largest of the bunch. It was 72 out of the 148, almost half, had what turned out to be flight response, which was running at the moment of encounter, or running soon after the encounter, or moving out of the area soon after that. not necessarily just running, but getting out of the area immediately was a big part of that. And it was reassuring to know that people would encounter this huge creature that's not supposed to exist and want to get away from it. If there were more people that were aggressive towards it or more people that were indifferent towards seeing it, then I'd be a little worried. But this made perfect sense to me in that so many people undertook the flight response. Now, the flop response was the interesting one to me. And actually, I got to do the freeze again. That was the freeze response was 31 people that reported that they just either froze in place or they felt like they felt like they were paralyzed, felt like they couldn't move, and then there were 23 of those people that felt immobilized immediately when they saw the thing. They just froze in place, and 8 said they had an inability to move within a few moments. The other 8, maybe a moment or two or something like that they remember moving and then just stopped and weren't able to do it. So the freeze response is typical of a lot of things in nature. A lot of prey animals freeze so that they can't be seen as easily, or that they become non-threatening in that way. And so it was not surprising to see that breakdown either. Now, where the big one was, the most unexpected group that I had of those 5 categories was the flop group. And it's called flop or fawn. Either you collapse onto the ground fully or partially, or you turn away from the source of trauma that's in there. And there were 27 people out of the 148 that reacted in that way. And that really surprised me. I was not expecting a lot of people to be part of that group. So it was really stunning. You think about it. We see people faint on TV all the time, as part of things that happen. But in real life, how often do you really see that? Every once in a great while that you get to see it. And to have that large a percentage of the group report those kind of responses was very stunning to me. And the last group was of 7 people, which is a friending response. And that is not one of negative reaction, but one of curiosity or connection. They feel a connection to the creature at that moment. There were 2 people that reported a special, what they called a special connection to the creature. That they felt the creature was communicating with them in some way. And the other people were just immediately curious about it. And, again, this is a very, it's a lesser known response, and it's a less prevalent response amongst people. And so this being 7 out of 148 didn't surprise me too much on there. But if you go through enough Bigfoot reports, you go through enough cryptid reports, you'll find people that feel that connection with them. And it will even report what they call mind speak, which is basically the Bigfoot's thoughts turning up in your head. You can call it telepathy or whatever you want to, but it's called mind speak. And whether folks feel they're reading the reaction of the creature, or they feel the creature is actually talking to them in their head, that's what they report. So, there were some things there that didn't surprise me at all, and then there were some things there that absolutely shocked me, that I didn't believe. And that's part of the research that needs to be done in a follow-up to this. And one of the things that I was hoping coming out of this study were that people would take some of this data and take single points of this data and really pursue it on their own and talk about it that way and be able to come up with more detailed information, because this is truly just an introductory kind of effort. It's more wide-ranging, but what this does, it offers people an opportunity and be able to pursue it on their own. And it's not just people that are involved in mental behavioral health. It's not just people that are scientists that can do this. All you have to do is research it a little bit and understand it enough to be able to go in and realize what it is that people are going through and what they're reporting, and be able to record the data. And interpretation of it can be left to a lot of other people if you wanted to do. What I'm doing right now with this is called a peer review process. I'm putting it out there to people in the community. I'm not charging anybody for it. This study is available to anybody that wants it, and I have shared it around probably about 3 dozen Facebook groups so far, and there's more to come. I'm doing speaking engagements with people where I'm giving them access to this report. And that was part of what I told these people that are getting involved, these witnesses, was that it would not be a money-making venture. I wasn't going to take their story and sell their story for money. I also said that I would not use their names. Everybody was going to be anonymous in this, and they were just going to be adding to a pool of data. So the opportunity for somebody to get famous off of this and be able to use it that way, it wasn't there for them. And that's part of what I removed from this as well, because that too adds, an ability to doubt the data. So there's going to be no profit from it. There's going to be no fame from it. It's just a straight scientific study that's going to present all this stuff. And, again, there's benefits for everybody involved.
I really want to applaud you on that. Not many people in this community will do all of that without some sort of a gain ultimately at the end. And I think that you're making the effort to do this and to be open and transparent and to invite peer review. And I think it speaks volumes. And I think it is a definite positive for the cryptid community.
Thank you. But, one of the things in this peer review process that I've seen, it's amazing to me because they usually when somebody puts out something in the Bigfoot community, especially on social media, it is scrutinized beyond belief, and there's naysayers and there's trolls and there's people that really push hard about this this thing against it. I've received zero blowback on this so far, and this report was released 6 weeks ago, and I've had one gentleman tell me that it was invalid because I was diagnosing people with these mental health issues, and then I had to point out to him, it's like, well, if you read a little closer, you'd have seen that was from other mental behavioral health professionals that these people have gone to for help that made those diagnoses and not me. And I haven't heard from him since. But overall, it's been something that nobody has really challenged too much at all. And that's not something I was expecting at all. I was expecting to have a lot of opposition and to have to argue through a lot of points on this. But I think the fact that this is based as much as possible with both feet planted firmly in established science that's practiced every day, that it becomes very hard to question it that way. And, there's been a few mental and behavioral health professionals that I've spoken to that have, either been on the groups that I talk about or they've been at the personal appearances that I've done. And they look at it and they say, wow, this is remarkable. This is something that we never really knew about. And now, there, at least a few people are more aware about it. And, I invite anybody from the mental behavioral health field to review this report and to really take a look at it and to look at it that way. The problem is there's not a lot of people that are going to want to put their professional reputations on the line to be able to look at something from the paranormal field. And, that's the hard part about it when it comes to established science, because established science is driven by funding, and funding does not come from the kind of sources that it used to. And most of the funding that you're going to get these days for scientific ventures are from public funds. And especially
in the cryptid world, though.
Yeah, public funds aren't doled out too well for the paranormal these days.
Exactly.
Are you afraid, or do you have a concern that this may somehow come back and negatively affect your career? I mean, are you afraid of having blowback come back on your primary professional life?
My pat answer to that is that I've been a Bigfoot researcher for 14 years. I stopped caring what people thought about me a long time ago.
It's all relative.
You can't be involved in this field and be touchy about what people say about you. You just can't.
You grow a tough skin.
That's part and parcel with what we do.
And you don't think that people can make it to where it would threaten your employment or anything like that?
Well, the job that I have is direct contact work with high school age kids that have behavior issues. It involves a very, shall we say, stressful work environment, a very demanding work environment. And the fact is I'm very motivated and very passionate about the work that I do. And my response to them is, okay, if I'm gone, who are you going to get? And, do you want somebody here that's passionate about this work and knows what he's doing and really, really loves these kids? Or are you going to get somebody who's there punching the time clock? You're going to roll the dice with who you're going to have apply for the job. And when it comes down to it, the passion that I have for this work supersedes most anything, because you just can't find enough people in this field that really have that passion for it. And I'm lucky to work with a number of people on my team there that are the same way. And like anything else, we have our challenges, and we deal with them and we move through. And but for most of those people that are working there, I wouldn't have any problem at all sticking up for them. And they know that I talk about this stuff openly, and that I'm shameless in my dedication to it. And the ones that aren't believers in it pretty much put up with it from their point of view. The ones that are more open-minded ask me about it a lot. And what's really fun is when the kids that I work with start to ask me about it. And I've actually got into it and done presentations in classes in this program within I work, and it's gone over really well. And I'll have kids just come up to me at lunchtime and ask me about stuff. It's fascinating to do, but what it does, it lets those kids know that you can work really hard at something. If you love it and it's good for you and it's not destructive, go for it.
Absolutely.
It's good for you, and make it work. And whatever they want to get involved in. I told a kid last year that he needed to find something that really was his and that he could do for himself. And he came up with the game of bocce. He really loved to play bocce, so we got him a bocce set. And we went out and we played. And this was his release. This is what was really good for him. And now he plays all the time. And it's fantastic. It's been a great release for him. And much in the same way that is for him, this kind of research feeds another passion that I have. And that passion just gets far beyond anybody's capability to criticize it.
I just, for some reason, I'm getting this joke. It keeps coming in my head of, I deal with teenagers during the week. My hobby is hunting monsters.
Yeah. That's really what it comes down to. Well, the thing is, I deal with teenagers that don't fit.
Yeah.
I deal with teenagers that are institutionalized, that they're very system savvy when it comes down to disciplinary systems and stuff like that. And the idea is that when they reach our program, we give them something that outsmarts them. We don't give them anything to push against, and we do it in such a way to where they realize, wow, I'm in high school now. I'm almost to the end of this. I better do something, or they're going to make me stay here for a long time. And that's generally how it works, to be able to get them going in what they do. And very few kids, we don't have a lot of problems with kids that are defiant for too long, because they realize that they're in a place where they're supported, and we're not their jailers, and we're not we're not cops and we're not people that hassle them. We're there to support them. And, one of the things that I tell them, when they're having a hard time with it, is that how many times in your life do you think you're going to be, showing up at a place and there's 20 people there and the only thing their job is to help you? Nowhere in our professional lives, in our personal lives, are we ever going to have that once you leave a program like that.
Mm-hmm.
So I try to get them to understand what they have available to them and to enjoy it while they can, because it's not permanent.
Unfortunately, there's the real world out there.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. It sounds like you have a lot of knowledge about that field, and you have a lot of knowledge that you can share with us in retrospect of that. So we really appreciate your sharing with us.
Very much.
Yes.
Very much.
That's my pleasure.
I'd like to take things a little bit on the lighter side, though, if I may. I have a little quiz I like to give our guests. Would you be amenable to something like that?
Sure.
Okay. We would like to introduce Rich's quick cryptid connection query. Rich, in this game, I have a few cryptids listed. I will name them off, and I want you to say yay if you believe in them, nay if you don't, or say what if you've never heard of them.
Okay.
Now, in this, I have 2 Easter eggs. One of them is a former known cryptid. The other one is a cousin of the big hairy fella we know as Bigfoot. And so throughout this, I want you to be reflecting on that, and we'll find out at the end if you've spotted them. Are you ready to play?
Okay. Let's go.
Okay. Wahila.
Say what?
Cameron Lake Monster.
Nay.
Skinwalker.
That's a big yay.
Taniwa.
Say what?
The vegetable lamb of Tartary.
I'm sorry. I got to say what on that one.
Barmano.
Oh, what was that again?
Barmano.
That's a say what?
Texas Woofus.
That's one I've heard of. I'm going to have to say nay on that.
Dingo Neck.
That's a say what?
Chimeras.
That's a yay.
Cacoan Pecuary.
Yeah, that's one I don't know. That's a say what?
All right, so the cousin to the big hairy fella was the Barmano. And the Barmano is, in my notes somewhere, is a bipedal humanoid primate cryptid, allegedly inhabits the mountainous regions of the northern Pakistan and Afghanistan regions. And the Chacoan pecuary was our former known cryptid, now known real creature. It is in South America's Grand Chacoan Regional in Paraguay, Bolivia, and southern Brazil. It is a hog-like creature.
And I think it's important to point out that people, when they think of cryptids, or they think of undocumented species, stuff like that, they don't understand that there's so many of them out there.
Oh, yes.
They tend to think of the big 3, which is the Yeti, the Bigfoot, and Loch Ness Monster, that they're traditional. But there's a lot of weird things going on out there that people don't understand. And when you said Skinwalker, that made the hair on the back of my neck stand up. Because I believe I had an encounter with one at one point. So I don't care what anybody says. That's
Would you be willing? Would you be willing to relate that?
Oh, absolutely. This was April of last year. I live in New Mexico, and my wife and I had taken my daughter to Northern Arizona University in Flagstaff for a soccer camp, and we were on our way back from there. Coming back from Arizona into New Mexico, right across the border, there's a Welcome Center. That Welcome Center is actually on the Navajo Nation. And my wife and daughter needed to go inside to use the ladies' room. I didn't need to do anything, so I just got out and stretched my legs a little bit and walked around. Walking through the parking lot, I get around the corner of the building, and behind the building, there's a 2-lane road that goes there. The other side of the 2-lane road is a wire fence, and there's a little meadow, maybe 100 feet or so, back to the sort of a classical rocky, uprising that's back there that you see in the Southwest all the time. Right on the other side of that fence was an older Native American gentleman standing there in jeans. He had a white button-down shirt on, a blue vest, feather hanging down from the left side of his head, and long gray hair. And I see him, and he sees me. We make eye contact, and I nodded to him, and he nodded to me. And just at that point, a car came down that little 2-lane road. My eyes followed that car for 3 or 4 seconds, maybe the distance between 2 telephone poles. When my eyes darted back to look at the old man, he was gone. And there really was nowhere for him to drop down or anything. I walked out to the back of the building, looked around. He wasn't running anywhere. There was nowhere to be seen. He had just disappeared. And it was at that point, again, I felt that chill go down the spine. You feel that something's not right. And I walked back out to our car, and my wife and daughter were just getting in there, and I said, okay, let's get in the car, let's go, we got to go. And I told them, I said, I don't care. Right now, I said, just get on the road, let's get going. And I explained it to them when we got back out on the road, and it was super weird. Again, I'm talking to 2 people that are pretty much non-committal to this area, to the paranormal area at all. Well, my wife, through some friends, knows people that have tribal connections. I have some friends here that are Native Americans, and we started asking them about that. And they all thought it was pretty weird. And when they start telling you that it's weird, that's when you really gotta shake your head a little bit and say, what happened? And over the course of it, I talked to a friend of mine who lives in northern New Mexico, who kind of encapsulated it the best we could. He asked me, have you ever done anything on the Navajo Nation to, like charity work or anything like that? And I said, no. And then it rung in my head that I had a young man in the program in which I work at the local high school here that was from the Navajo Nation. And I connected with him. This young man had traumatic brain injury when he was young. He had a hard time processing things, in his mind. It was very, very frustrating to him. He had a hard time getting along with people. And I invested a lot of time in him. I was basically one-on-one with him for about 7 months. Go to each class with him, teach him how to get ready and to get going. And it was a real basic type of thing, but we got him through it. And it was actually last year he actually got through and graduated from high school because he was able to get in there and do his classwork and be able to finish out the program. And my friend from northern New Mexico told me, he said, it's easy. You were thanked. Mm. You made a commitment to somebody from the nation, and this Skinwalker appeared to thank you. Mm-hmm. And it's almost unheard of for outsiders to ever see a Skinwalker, to witness them. And, the reputation of the Skinwalker is kind of, shall we say, it's been embellished a lot. There's a lot of people that focus on the shape-shifting myths and things like that. But what it comes down to, Skinwalkers are what in Native American culture equate to witches. Witches in their culture are men. And these skinwalkers are protectors of their people.
Oh.
And where they get a really bum rap is that they don't operate by anybody else's standards or sensitivities. They defend their people, they protect their people in whatever means they deem necessary. And there have been a lot of bad encounters with them in the past. The legends of them being shapeshifters and all these other things, that's something I don't know a lot about. I don't have any experience with. But the fact that this gentleman could just up and disappear in front of me was stunning to me. And it's a very scary moment. But that nod, that approval that I got at there, my friend was convinced that was him thanking me for investing myself so much in a member of that nation.
Wow.
And, it put a different perspective on it for me. And I became far less creeped out by it and far more satisfied with the effort that I had made for another human being. And it enabled me to cope with that much better. I think I would have done a lot better with it if I'd have just seen him walk off. But I guess that just wasn't his way. And so, we think, he didn't present himself in a traditional manner. He presented himself in a manner that I would be more familiar with. That's another clue. And it was something that we have to, factor into all that, because the description that I gave all the Native American people didn't match anything that they knew of. And just the clothes and the feather, the way it was and everything like that. But he presented himself, they believe he presented himself in a way that I could be initially, at first blush, be very accepting of. And that's huge. That's huge when an opportunity like that, an experience like that comes up, and you realize that this may very well have been because I did something well, I did something right, and really dedicated myself to a human being that needed help. And I guess that's what it takes, to make those connections. And I would encourage anybody, if you can better someone else's life, do it.
Aptly put. I've known in the past any re-encounters that I've heard in regards to skinwalkers, usually a negative encounter. So it's interesting, and I'm really excited to hear a positive encounter, because it kind of gives you hope and a little bit more of knowledge into the culture of the skinwalker as we know it.
Well, Native American societies in general are full of just fantastic people. And, the Native American cultures, along with the old Spanish settler cultures and the European cultures, have been mixed here in New Mexico for over 400 years. And so there's a lot more interaction between people here. And what you understand is that the Native American culture isn't 100% in line with what everybody else does. At first blush, it can be a rough kind of culture, socially, or the way it goes. But then again, you think about the existence that these folks, as a people have gone through, and you understand it very easily. But just like anybody else, if you treat those folks with respect, you look them in the eye when you talk to them, and you're not condescending, you're genuine with them, like you would anybody else. They're great people. They're fantastic people, and I've greatly enjoyed, being around folks like that. And it comes down to it. They're a little different than you, but they're also great folks to be around, and they can teach you a lot.
Richard, where do you move forward now? You're waiting on the peer review to come in and to go through that entire process. What do you got planning going forward?
I plan to spend a lot of time talking about this report and about the information that's in it. And basically, like I said, I'm not selling it to anybody. You don't have to send me shipping and handling to get this thing. Just anybody that wants a copy of this, I'll send it to them because I think it's very important information. It's important for people to understand what witnesses are going through. And as researchers, it's important for them to understand that this is a form of evidence in and of itself. For a long time, I looked for footprints in the ground. And what I've really uncovered are footprints on people's psyche, people's minds. And these reactions can't be faked. These are physiological reactions that occur as a result of stress, as a result of trauma. And for anybody to be able to fake these reactions, for anybody to try and hoax this, you have to be better than anybody I've ever seen in 11 years working in the mental behavioral health field. These are things that, you have to fake severe headaches all day. You have to fake lack of sleep all day. You actually have to do these things to yourself physically to be able to exhibit what a lot of these effects are. And there's a long line of these things. If you try to exhibit just one effect, it's going to be very obvious to anybody who knows what they're doing that you're not being genuine. It's going to be because these are such complex and deep-reaching reactions. The best I've ever seen anybody do is about 30 minutes of it. It's just too difficult to do all day, every day, to be able to present all this, when you're not actually going through it. Mm-hmm. So people are in pain. People are hurting. And what this study needs to do is get it out there to people that when somebody's a witness, they don't need to be made fun of. They don't need to be harassed. These people need support. They need somebody as simply as just sitting there and listening to them without judging them. Can be a huge, huge thing. And that's not a specialized skill. That's a decision that anybody can make to offer that service to somebody that really needs to unburden themselves of a situation that is torturous to the mind and to the soul. And I've committed myself to addressing that, and I urge anybody listening, if you find somebody who came across somebody say a ghost, or they saw a funny light in the sky, and all you need to do maybe is ask them, so you doing okay with this? Are you feeling all right about it? I want to make sure you're okay. And that's all it really takes. Anybody can do that. And the problem is that very few people do. And, one of the things that I talked about in this study were that 61 out of the 148 people in this study reported that they had altered or terminated relationships with people in their lives. And we're talking about family, friends, even professional relationships that ended or were severely changed. It is my hope that in the future, if somebody does another survey like this, that number becomes a very small number, and that it becomes more socially acceptable. It becomes more, people will act with more awareness in these situations to be able to let these people unburden themselves and speak about what they went through, because they desperately want to in most cases, but they don't feel they can.
What are your plans for the future now? What are you working on or about to start working on other than just this current paper that you just completed?
Yeah, well, while I am talking to people about this study, the next effort I'm undertaking is something that has been in the back of my mind for a while, and that is a comparison study between the most popularly reported physical features of Bigfoot and how they compare to typical physical features of human beings that have gigantism. And, people, I think, know about folks like Andre the Giant and like that, people who really had that condition, but they don't understand how many boxes both of those would check. people with gigantism and Bigfoot check a lot of the same boxes on that. And what I want to do is a comparative analysis of those similarities in the effort to start a discussion about just what these creatures are. How much like us are they really? Because, Native American cultures, and they go out and they speak of Bigfoot or Sasquatch as a people, not as a creature, as a people. If you go on to Native American lands, the police departments there will investigate Bigfoot sightings. They will actually go out and take a look around, and do any investigation, or like they would any other investigation, and look at it, because they are sure in their minds as a culture that these creatures are there, and they've been there for centuries. They know about this, so it's just part of their real world. So how much are Bigfoot really like a people as we know it? And to compare them to human beings that are most like them, to prove that. That's what I really want to do. I really want to get people to start talking about that relationship. Are Bigfoot really like a megafauna version of human? Or what are they? How human are they? They have a foot that looks like ours. They have hands that look like ours. They're just a bit oversized. But then again, we can talk about that when it comes down to it in this report. There's a lot of similarities between the two that I would like to hear a lot of discussion on.
I'm looking forward to it. That sounds like a fascinating study.
Let me ask you this. You're not necessarily implying with that study, I know you're just going into it, and so everything, obviously, your findings is going to be, just guesswork right now. But are you actually thinking that you're going to find something that makes it closer to human, or maybe a little farther away? And I'm thinking about different issues, like, well, with gigantism, for example, those people tend not to live very long. It's, the human body doesn't deal well with being at that size. And so are you suspecting that, okay, this would say that, yes, we are similar. We're on the same tree, but we're dealing with something that's a parallel evolution to us, or something like that. I'm assuming you're expecting there to be some sort of a symmetry between Bigfoot and human. Is that where you're going, or?
Really, it's looking for explanation. Why are there so many similarities?
Okay.
Why are they so much like the oversized human beings that we all have, that we've seen before? And if you do any research into gigantism, you'll find it's a stunning thing. When human beings get that big, why is it that they exhibit so many physical features that are similar to what's reported in Bigfoot? And this study is going to be more of a question than it is a source of information. You're going to learn some things going through it. Most people will learn things going through it. But ultimately, it's going to become a debate of, why are they so similar? Why is their foot so much like our foot?
Right.
Why is it when we get that big that they look so much like those features that you see on Bigfoot? And I think a lot of people are going to be surprised by how much similarity there is. But again, what I'm doing is taking existing data that nobody really put together. Nobody took this two and decided to make, and saw that it made four,
right,
and go up with it. And that's what I want people to do. I want to do something in real science, something that's unquestioned in science, and then put it out there for people to give an explanation on when it comes to a comparison of reported features in Bigfoot.
Okay.
Now, Rich, in the last section of your study that you have published, you have spoken in regards to people wanting to have another encounter. Can you elaborate a little bit on that, please?
Absolutely. Again, we're talking about 148 subjects here. That of them, 96 reported that they had a real desire to see the creature again. And I was very surprised by that. I was thinking more along the lines of about a 50-50 split when it came down to it. So this number is a little bit high. People that have had such traumatic reactions, yet they want to see to see what caused it again. And I think it's maybe more of a closure kind of issue that these folks have, and of those 148, 38 people reported that they did not want to see the creature again. A very low number from what I was expecting out of it. And 14 said they didn't know. They really weren't sure. They hadn't really put any thoughts to it. So even though there's something that is so moving here, there's people that want to have that experience again, that want to be able to go in with their eyes wide open this time, not be surprised by it or anything like that. And I think that really comes down to a need for truth. And ultimately, we're talking about life-changing occurrences here. Things that happen from the outside that change a person's life. And the hope that comes out of this, for me, is that there's people who want to know the truth just like I do. Mm-hmm. And that they want to be able to find out just what's going on and be able to have that closure for themselves. And, I have, anybody that goes through severe trauma and can see the light at the end of the tunnel, to be able to know that they can get there and go through a real healing and recovery is just fantastic to me. So, that 96 people, those 96 really restored my faith in the human spirit, because they want to know what's going on and they want to see that truth. Mm-hmm.
I'm going to throw a loop around you.
Okay.
This may pull your feet out from underneath you, but it's a question I ask all of our guests.
Okay.
What monster's under your bed? Or maybe it's your closet.
I hope it's the Cookie Monster, because he and I share a lot of views in life. So, especially, in that we only eat broccoli occasionally, and that cookies are the best thing. So, I think he's onto something there as far as lifestyle.
Ah, okay. Well, that's a first. That was a first.
That's a good one.
The Cookie Monster. Yeah. We've gotten every other kind of monster. We haven't had Cookie Monster yet. That's interesting.
Yeah, welcome to my life. That's how. That's really how I think. And there's something else about this that people that know me will tell you, and I don't know if it's come out as much there, but what's helped me deal so much with the situations that I have and be able to handle people that are going through their journeys in this is that I have a very healthy sense of humor, and the ability to laugh at things, especially at myself, has been invaluable in this process, in this journey that I'm on and going through this. And I encourage people, yes, this can be a very serious subject. Yes, it can be trauma, but you can enjoy the ride. You can enjoy the journey, see the fun in it, and, understand that you're going to be investing a lot of time and a lot of effort, whether it's in research or whether it's in recovery. And you should enjoy that time as much as possible, because you're on the other side of the trauma. You're on the other side of the problem, and you're moving in the right direction. So, that's something I try and bring to the process, and I'm hoping everybody else would too.
Well, Rich, we really, really appreciate you sharing your journey with us and our listeners here.
I truly appreciate the opportunity here. This show is very different. It's very different in that I haven't been asked a lot about the experiences that I've had, the encounters that I've had. And you didn't ask me 27 questions about it. You know, you didn't rush the creature here. And that's very impressive. You want to know more about the science of it, about the real life connections to it. And that's a very different thing in the paranormal world, because as I stated before, too many people rush the creature and don't get to the meat of the issue about what's going on. So I applaud you both for taking that stance and for taking that tack. And it's something that's sorely needed in the research field.
Well, I appreciate it because it was entirely done unconsciously. It's just how we approach things. You know,
natural progression.
The subject of our show is as much your work was just you, and getting to know you, and how you thought about it, and how you handled Bigfoot in your life, and how it came down.
Cryptids in your life.
Yeah, that it's we usually like to say the cryptid lifestyle, but you know, it's all encompassing. It's how has this evolved? How has it gotten in your life? And that's what we got from you, and we very much appreciate that. Your research is extremely.
Thank you for the opportunity to bring that across.
Oh, you're more than welcome. More than welcome. Richard, we're going to go ahead and let you go. I realize you do have a life, and I know you had a busy day, and so we'll go ahead and let you off. But we would like to kind of hold on and see if we can maybe have you come back sometime.
Would you be willing to do something like that?
Oh, that'd be fantastic. I'd love to.
Perfect.
You know, being that most of my research is going to be based in established science, this would be a great place to talk about that, because it's something where you can report the process and you can report the data and you can report the results, and you know that's what it's about. It's about the effort. It's not about the showbiz angle of it. That's a fantastic thing to have available.
Yeah, I mean, you know, I know we mentioned it to you before and everything else, but we're not an encounter show. We're not trying to sell people. We're certainly not trying to scare them. We're trying to portray the real life nitty gritty of the cryptid world and the cryptid community. So, Richard, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Very much my pleasure.
All righty. We will talk to you later. And let's see here. You have a good night.
Guests of Cryptid Connection are all members of the Cryptid Connection website. Join the community. A safe, secure, and private place for all your paranormal and cryptid pursuits.
Every cowboy, he always misses when he's aiming at the target in his head. And every broken man finds his idle hands grasping at tomorrow's promised land. And I've been thinking about running, and I'll get out on the town just for myself. And that's when I saw her, and she looked right through me. And when I said I do that day, I really do. 'Cause every cowboy, he always misses his shot when he's aiming at the target in his head. And every broken man finds his idol hand I've gotta leave this town to find my way. And when that plane touched down on that island town, I knew that my life's work was in their hands. So I started digging for wells of water, and I'm a hero in their eyes. It's clear to see. 'Cause every cowboy, he always misses his shot when he's aiming at the target in his head. And every broken man finds his idle hand, grasping at tomorrow's promised land. And I've been thinking about the time that I have wasted sitting here. 'Cause I've been thinking that all this thinking is the thing that keeps me further from myself.
The music and soundtrack for the opening is from Epic Film Score by Alex Kaskin. The closing credits are Every Cowboy by Cellophane Sam.